No Standing 8 Boxing Podcast. We discuss every organization and weight class. With your host, Bronx Bomber, educated with the craft. Punch a topic hard like heavyweights, hitting the bag. From the top rank to the upcoming, washed up to the dark horse. Champs, #1 contenders, quick jab or sharp cross. We your source, come get it. Tuning in, you can have it. Internationally known, our information is valid. See, we on a higher plane, no two episodes the same. We get better as we train, so on top we remain. Come join the conversation, the same sight you'll gain. In and outside of the rain, we do the damn thing.
All right, fight fans, welcome to another edition of No Standing 8 Boxing Talk. I am your host, the Bronx Bomber, and today we're going to give you a fight recap on all of this weekend's fights. A card that started, or fight weekend, should I say, that started on Friday. And we're going to cover all those cards for you and bring you the latest and tell you what happened and everything. All right, fight fans, let's get this going. First, we're going to talk about the fight card that was on Friday night. It was a small card that was played on DAZN. It was out of Houston, Texas. Red Owl Boxing put on their Box Fest #9 on DAZN. And what I liked about it, it had some good fights, small card, small venue. And listen, if you're not into club shows, then and watch these small little cards, you'd be missing out some good fights. The main event was a veteran by the name of Edward Vasquez versus Daniel Bailey. And Edward Vasquez won and got an unanimous decision over Daniel Bailey. Good, tough fight. So visit DAZN. If you have DAZN, visit their stock in previous fights, and you were able to watch that fight. But the biggest thing coming out that night was a possible knockout candidate of the year. Fighter by the name Ephraim Bowie landed the knockout blast of the year against Ernie Cuevas in the 5th round of their match. Look up that fight. I am not going to go into any more detail because we have a lot to cover. But look out. Ephraim Bowie is now, I want to say, 9-0 with 8 KOs. Southpaw, little awkward kind of fighter, but he's fast with his hands and his feet, and obviously packing a punch because he knocked Ernie Cuevas into another dimension. It was an ugly knockout. I have it as one of the candidates of the year. So check out that fight. All right. Let's move on to Saturday's card, the big card with Cinco De Mayo weekend, which was Canelo Alvarez versus Jaime Mungia for the undisputed super middleweight championship of the world. And as you all know now, if you're a boxer fan, you must be living under a rock. If you don't know, that Canelo Alvarez won a unanimous decision, a clear unanimous decision over Jaime Mungia. It was a very good fight. A lot of people begged to differ. Some fans were disappointed that there wasn't a knockout or more to it than what it was, but I don't understand what they were watching because it was an action fight pretty much from the beginning to the very end. All right, Jaime Mungia gave Canelo his toughest fight in the season forever since pretty much Gennady Golovkin prime. He was the first fighter in that span of fights to bring the fight to Canelo Alvarez for the opening cut bell. And kudos to Canelo Alvarez, who showed glimpses of what he used to be. He wasn't fazed by Jaime Mungia's output, and I'll get to that in a second, and used his experience and the fighter that he is and the superstar that he is and the great fighter that he is to pretty much school the young buck in Jaime Mungia and told Jaime Mungia, this is what happens when you step up to the big leagues. There is fighting, and then there's world-class elite fighting. And that's what Jaime Mungia was up against with Canelo Alvarez. And I'm going to cover that here in a little bit because Jaime Mungia, in a loss, rose his stock. That's how good of a fight this was, and that's how good Jaime Mungia did. He was just outclassed by a very, very skilled, very experienced, very crafty Canelo Alvarez. All right, so the first round of that main event, Jaime Mungia comes out and he is fighting a little differently than what Jaime Mungia does. Jaime Mungia is a volume puncher. He is go, 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 Mexican style of fighting. Will risk it all to land his, take some to give some. And he had a different tactic. And my keys to victory in my prediction article, which I predicted Jaime Mungia will win a split decision, uh, I was one of the few people giving Jaime Mungia the split decision. I'll explain that here in a little bit as to why. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'll cover it now so I could get through the keys of victory and what happened. Pretty much how this fight played out, which is exactly what I wrote in my article on my Substack or my publication. So if you visit that, visit my social media, you'll find links to this stuff and you can read what I wrote prior to the fight happening. And the reason why I picked Jaime Mungia to defeat Canelo Alvarez via split decision was because of his output, right? So Canelo Alvarez hasn't been the Canelo of old. He's not going to sit there and bang with you. He's a good counter puncher, but I expected the younger man to put an immense amount of pressure on the older fighter, and Canelo wasn't going to be able to shake that off as easily as he would have when he was his youth, or use his mobility or his angles and his fighting style that he was of his youth. And why do I say that? Well, because Canelo hasn't been Canelo since the Caleb Plant fight, right? I say that all in the article, right? I won't hold the loss of Bivol against him because Bivol was the bigger fighter. Canelo dared to be great, moved up in light heavyweight to extend his legacy and challenge a bona fide light heavyweight, and it just didn't work out for him. That is not a hit of Canelo Alvarez at all. If anything, it's a testament to his greatness. However, the third Golovkin fight, I won't give him credit for. Golovkin was way past his prime. Still a very good fighter, but I expected Canelo to win that. And then he fights John Ryder, and he didn't knock out John Ryder. Yet Jaime Mungia did, which led me to believe that Canelo doesn't have the pepper of his punches that he used to. And then after that, he fights a smaller Jermell Charlo. He's supposed to fight the bigger of the Charlo brothers, Jamal, but that fight didn't manifest itself. Jermell went ahead and took that fight and pretty much came to lay down and collect the paycheck, in my opinion. So we haven't seen a super, super dominant performance or an active performance from Canelo in almost 3 years. He's been injured. He's been in a lot of tough battles. He's 33 years old. He's been boxing for 20 years. Yes, 33 is still young, but is old when it comes to terms of boxing and all the wars that Canelo has had. So I gave the younger, more active, more pressure style of fighter the nod in my prediction article, and Canelo, being the elite fighter and the crafty veteran he is, proved me wrong, okay? It's boxing. It's the theater of the unexpected, as Larry Merchant would say, and anything can happen within that ring. But Canelo was very calculated, and he did my keys to victory. He did what he was supposed to do to win this fight. So in my keys to victory, I said that Jaime Mungia had a fight like the taller fighter. He was the taller fighter. He was the bigger fighter. He had a fight like the taller fighter, and he did that for the first 3 rounds. And was taking the fight to Canelo Alvarez. It kind of had Canelo, stunned like I thought he was going to do, and he needed to maintain that. But listen, I also said in my article that I'm not dumb. Fighters are fighters, boxers are boxers. Very rare do you get the combination of the two. You're either a boxer or either a fighter for the most part, and Mungia is a fighter. And I said if he could fight off the temptation to engage in a toe-to-toe match with Canelo in the center of the ring, he could win this fight. If he would have fought the same way he was fighting the first and third rounds to the remainder of the fight, I'm not saying that he could have won, because, again, we don't know how Canelo would have reacted to that. He's the more experienced. He's an elite fighter. He probably would have adjusted to that too. But what I'm saying is he would have given him the better chances to win, right? That fight. And what happens? Mungia could not fight the temptation. He felt like he was getting the better of Canelo Alvarez. And listen, he was young, dumb, and full of you-know-what. And he went in there and committed a mistake, started sticking that chin out just a little bit. Canelo says, okay, I'm going to take what you give me. Mungia gave him that chin, and Canelo tagged him with an uppercut, dropped Mungia in the 4th round, and that changed the whole outcome of this fight. Mungia, after that, wasn't as confident. That hurt him. He was stunned, and he's lucky that knockout happened later in the round, because it had happened earlier in the round. I believe Canelo would have probably put him away. All right. And so that didn't happen. And then after that, Canelo just starts to be crafty, be the veteran he is, starts to dig into his arsenal, pulled out all the weapons, the body attack, the counter punching, just an array of punches, and was attacking Mungia's body. The Mungia started to protect that body. The Canelo came upstairs with the hooks, exactly like I said he was going to do in the Keys of Victory, right? So when I said the Keys of Victory was Canelo Alvarez needs to do what he does best against Jaime Mungia, which is use Mungia's aggressive attacks against him. That's exactly what he did in the fourth round. All right, so I almost counterpunch effectively against Mungia. He did that as well. That's where the uppercut came from. And then Jaime has a long torso. I'm reading my article verbatim, which is the prime picking for Canelo left hook to the body. Did he not do that? He sure did. And this will slow down the younger challenger, and it slowed down that momentum pretty much for the entire fight. And bring his hands down and allow Canelo to land clean up punches to Mungia's head. That was my keys to victory for Canelo. That's what he did. And he ended up winning a unanimous decision against a young, hungry fighter. So that's how the fight played out. I expected nothing less from Canelo. I just didn't know if he was going to be able to execute that based on what I had seen in recent fights. But being the elite professional fighter that he is, levels, folks, levels. That's what we saw on display. Master performance from a master fighter, a great fighter in Canelo Alvarez. And Mungia does not need to hold his head down at all, because throughout the fight, he was competitive. He was giving it just as good as he got. And there was glimpses in there, maybe in like the 9th round or 10th round, where Mungia was doing some work and pressing the fight. But no matter how hard he got hit, no matter how much he got rocked, he went out on his shield, right? And what I mean by that was he lost the fight. He lost the fight. If he was going to lose, he was going to lose fighting, not ducking, not running. And Jaime Mungia did nothing but raise his stock. I expect nothing. I expect to see him in big fights. He is now in that elite group of fighters, in that world-class type of status. And you know what? He was that before. What I'm saying is now he's recognizable to most of the boxing world. He has moved over from just boxer to now being recognized by boxing fans around the world. So that's what Jaime Mungia is. I expect him to have a bright future moving forward, get bigger fights, and contend in the 168-pound division, and be a force to reckon with. All right. As far as Canelo goes moving forward, there's a lot of speculation in the ring. When asked if he was going to fight Devin Benavidez, he chose the typical, I'm going to get back with my team. I'm going to enjoy some vacation time with my family. He did not call out David Benavidez or said that was the fight that he wanted next, which is clearly the fight that the fans want to see next. The fans have been screaming for this fight forever, but it has not manifested itself for numerous reasons. A, Canelo is the top dog in boxing, period. He is the top dog. He has been the top dog for a long time. He is in that Floyd Mayweather status where he could pick and choose who he fights, where to fight, whenever he wants to fight. So everybody else has to take a number and sit. That's what happens when you're top dog. Any one of these guys that has fought Canelo previously, to include Gennady Golovkin, had the opportunity to dethrone the top dog, and they did not. So when you're the top dog, you get to pick and choose who you want to fight and where you want to fight, and that's the end of the story. That's boxing today, folks. It's not the boxing of yesteryears where number one fought the champion right away. That's just not what it is no more. It's a business now. It's always been a business, but now it's more of a business for the boxers. Before, it was business for the promoters, right? The promoters matched who they thought was going to line their pockets. Now boxers are having more say, more control of who they fight, who they want to fight. At least the top dogs, right? The Canelo Alvarez's of the world, and Tank Davis's, and so forth and so forth. Those guys could demand who they want to fight. That's Floyd Mayweather set that blueprint, and that's just the way it is. Everybody else take a backseat. And guess what? The Devin Benavidez fight would have manifested itself earlier had he not lost his belt on the scales and to failed drug tests. So he pretty much had to start over again and get into that lottery of who's going to fight Canelo Alvarez. He did it to himself. So when the super middleweight division was stacked with fighters, All Canelo Alvarez was saying was, hey, you guys fight yourselves. I had to earn my way to the top. I had to fight the fights that I needed to get here. So you're just not going to get a payday on the expense of my name. You got to fight yourselves. And then I'll fight. Once you fight yourselves, I'll fight who the top dog is amongst y'all. That's all he was saying. And they didn't do that either because everybody wanted the big money. They didn't see the bigger picture. They didn't see working themselves up to that big money fight. They wanted the big money now. Instant gratification. Everybody thought they would demand their respective rankings, and they refused to fight each other. They wanted to go after the Canelo. And Canelo said, y'all fight yourselves, and I'll fight whoever's after that, right? So Demetrius Andrade, David Benavidez, Caleb Plant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, did not do that. The only person that could remotely say they tried to do that was Caleb Plant. And he was the one that got the payday back then, right? And then he went on to fight David Benavidez. So right now, what's next for Canelo? Who knows? I doubt we get the David Benavidez fight this year. David Benavidez is scheduled to fight in June. And Canelo is scheduled to fight in September. So I doubt that fight happens. If I'm a betting man, I would say that the next up in the Canelo sweepstakes will be Edgar Berlanga. All right. Edgar Berlanga is ranked in the top 10 in every sanctioned body. So let's look at the super middleweight division. Edgar Berlanga is ranked number 1 in the WBA, ranked number 4 in the IBF. He is ranked number 5. And in the WBC, he is ranked number 8. So he's easily in the top 10. He is probably the most marketable one of those top 10. Most marketable one is Edgar Berlanga because he made a name for himself in those first 15 fights with those first 15 knockouts in the first round. So he is a superstar in his own right. Not the superstar he thinks he is, but he's a superstar in his own right. And he could probably, Eddie Hearn and all of them could probably work and get in that fight. And guess what? I'm going to say it. He's probably the safest to fight. He's the most marketable and the safest to fight. As far as David Benavidez goes, I based on what I saw, even though Canelo gave a great performance, Jaime Mungia is not David Benavidez. David Morrell, forget it. David Morrell hits too hard. He may not, and he boxes well, very well. So I don't see Canelo taking that kind of a risk. And David Morrell is not as marketable as David Benavidez. High risk, low reward type of situation with David Morrell. And David Benavidez is high risk, high reward, but Canelo probably wants to still be the king. And he knows if he fights David Benavidez, that is at risk. All right. I'm not saying that David Benavidez clearly beats him. I'm not saying that right now. I have to go back and do some analysis. But it is high risk and highly probable that he beats him. All right. So Edgar Berlanga is probably the guy we're going to see Canelo Alvarez fight this September. It makes money. Well, Puerto Rico versus Mexico. Berlanga is pretty much a name. And in terms of marketability, he could sell that fight. Canelo could sell that fight. And Berlanga, for all his flaws, still could punch. And if he catches Canelo, even though Canelo has a beard and a chin from hell, I don't think it'll knock Canelo out because any man that could take the punch of Gennady Golovkin and brush it off the way Canelo has done is it's not human. So Canelo's not human in that aspect, right? So I don't think Berlanga knocks Canelo out, but it's enough of a punch to keep Canelo at bay. Pretty much a draw Berlanga in and use his counters and his skills and his slick, weave and his body movement, his angles to impose some pain on Berlanga. Berlanga has been dropped, so I could easily see Canelo knocking him out late. But anyway, I'm getting into prediction mode. I don't want to do that. That fight's not even signed. It's just being talked about. That's just my intuition saying that I think that's probably the next fight that happens. On the undercard, the co-main was not the kind of co-main that you want to lead up for such a mega fight like Canelo. It was Mario Barrios versus Fabian Maidana, the brother of Marcos Maidana of Argentina. It was a good fight. if you're a boxing fan. All right. That was one of those stylistic kind of fights, one of those tactical, strategic kind of fights. It was a good fight, folks. It just did not lack. I mean, it lacked the firepower, just didn't have the firepower, the excitement to lead into the main event. But if you're a boxer fan and a true fan of the sweet science, that was a good fight. All right. It was a hard fought fight. And Mario Barrios won on all three scorecards of the judges, a unanimous decision. Fabian Maidana gave a good show himself. Mario Barrios got beat up a little bit, had his eye closed. So these guys beat each other up. So it was a fight. There was a fight in there because both guys left with bruises, okay? It just wasn't the fight that was indicative of such a massive card on Cinco de Mayo weekend in terms of entertainment and exciting the crowd. I certainly enjoyed it because I'm a boxing guy. I like boxing. I respect the sweet science for what it is. But anyway, Mario Barrios retains his interim WBC belt in the co-main event. In the third fight of the night, Figueroa stops Magdaleno. He retains his WBC interim featherweight title in a tough fight, and he KOs Magdaleno with a body shot. This was a rough kind of street fight. A lot of inside fighting, a lot of clinching. Magdaleno had his moments, but Amanda Figueroa prevailed and brought the fight to Jesse Magdaleno and knocked out Jesse Magdaleno with a body shot to retain his WBC interim featherweight. I can't talk today, folks. I am so sorry. Interim featherweight title belt. And in the opening fight of the main card, Stanionis fought Gabriel Maestres in Mantis. Stanionis of Lithuania fought Gabriel Maestre of Venezuela for Stanionis' WBA world title, and he won a unanimous decision in a tough fight. Maestres gave a good show himself in the first few rounds, but Stanionis just took over and beat up the older Gabriel Maestre, who, if I'm not mistaken, was 37 years old, and youth took over, and he beat up Gabriel Maestre over 12 rounds and won a unanimous decision. So there you have it. That's that card. And then we had a monster card early this morning from Japan where Inoue, the monster, fought Luis Nery. And in a very, very good fight, all pretty much a one-sided fight after the first round, Inoue knocked out Luis Nery and defended his title in Japan and showed why he is the greatest fighter of this generation. I said it, plain and simple, okay? He is the greatest fighter of this generation, and that's what it is, folks. I don't know what else to tell you. If you are living under a rock, or you're a boxer fan and you don't know who Naoya Inoue is, then you are missing out. I know he doesn't get a lot of shine because of the weight classes he fights in. He fights in the smaller weight classes. He doesn't get a lot of shine. But if you're not watching Naoya Inoue, and I'm probably butchering his name, right now, you call yourself a boxer fan. You are truly missing out in our generation, in this generation's greatest fighter. He is the greatest fighter, hands down, this generation has seen. In the first round, Luis Nery from Mexico drops Inoue, and you can hear everybody's breath go away at the Tokyo Dome. You could hear everybody's breath go away in that dome when the monster, their hero, Naoya Inoue, gets dropped in the first round by a Nery left hook that just floored him. Inoue gets up, he survives the round, he fights back, and after that is like Godzilla being woken up from his sleep. It was nothing but destruction. Inoue took the fight to Nery, dropped him 3 times in the course of the fight, and Nery didn't have nowhere near the success he did in that first round at all. And the end came in the 6th round where Inoue lands a straight right, I want to say, and destroys, crumbles Nery. and retains his undisputed titles. And what can I say, folks? It was just a dominant performance. He did what the greats do. When you're considered a GOAT, he did what GOATs do. They win. They find a way to win. They don't lay down. Every GOAT that has suffered adversity, think back to Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns. Sugar Ray Leonard, it just seemed like he could not figure out Thomas Hearns. He turns it up, and he ends up knocking out Tommy Hearns. Same thing here. When faced with adversity, the GOATs, the greats know how to overcome that adversity, rise to the occasion, and show us why they're great, why they're all-time greats. Because that's what Inoue is, an all-time great. He will go down the history books along with every other great. He's in that class of Sugar Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali, and any other greats that you want to put up there in whatever division. He's an all-time great. He's an all-time pound-for-pound great. And you are missing out if you're not watching this guy fight. I'm sorry. He's, I want to say he's 30 years old now. He doesn't have much, maybe a few years left if he continues to compete. And then even then, he only has a few years of competing on a high level because Father Time, as the cliche goes, is undefeated. Okay? So I'm just pulling up the age of Naoya Inoue, and he is 31, folks. So at best, he has maybe another 3 years left, 4 or 5 tops of fighting at a very high level. 3 at a high level, and then at 34, 35, 36, you'll start to see him change and change his style, kind of like what Canelo Alvarez is doing now, right? He's still fighting at a very high level, but he's not at an elite level, not the Canelo Alvarez of 27, 28, 29, the Canelo Alvarez that fought Gennady Golovkin and just went on that streak a few years ago. So catch him now. Catch greatness now. Watch him. Whenever you hear that name, the monster, Naoya Inoue is fighting. Catch that name and watch that fight and be part of history. All right, folks, that is my recap for this weekend's fights. I hope you enjoyed it. Please visit me at The Bronx Bomber on Twitter, at The Bronx Bomber on Instagram, The Bronx Bomber Boxing, on Facebook, on TikTok. On TikTok, it's No Standing Boxing. You'll be able to catch all my videos, all my analysis, and visit my Twitter page to have the link to access my new publication, which is No Standing Boxing News and Podcast on Substack. So if you go to Substack and do a search for No Standing Boxing News and Podcast, you'll see all my articles, my podcast, and of course, visit Fights Around the World for my articles there for a lot of very good writers that Abraham Gonzalez has. He has a stable, just like promoters have stable of boxers. Abraham Gonzalez has a stable of very, very good writers, including myself, in there. So you can read all of our articles, predictions, news, opinions, and also WWE. Thank you for your time. The Bronx Bombers out. And tune in for other episodes. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for following me. Much love. Bronx Bombers out.
No Standing 8 Boxing Podcast. We discuss every